Have you ever heard about the shocking truth behind these trials? Well, buckle up, because Scotland had one of the highest rates of witch trials in Europe, and today we're going to reveal some jaw-dropping facts that will leave you speechless. From the dark societal fears and superstitions to the individual stories of those persecuted, we'll uncover the profound impact these trials had on Scottish society. So, let's dive in and understand the context, the cases, and the chilling truths behind the Scottish witch trials. The historical context. To truly grasp the gravity of the Scottish witch trials, we must first understand the historical context of the time. The trials primarily took place between the 16th and 18th centuries, a period marked by significant social, political, and religious changes. In the late 16th century, Scotland was undergoing the Protestant Reformation, a movement that significantly altered the religious landscape. The Reformation, which sought to rid the Church of practices deemed corrupt and heretical, also heightened fears of the devil's influence. Witchcraft, seen as a direct manifestation of the devil's power, became a prime target. The Scottish Witchcraft Act of 1563 was pivotal. This legislation, enacted during the reign of Mary, Queen of Scots, made witchcraft a capital offence. The act stated, "Any persones accused of witchcraft or sorcery shall suffer death." This law set the stage for over a century and a half of witch hunts and executions, fostering a climate where accusations could lead to death. King James VI, later James I of England, played a crucial role in fueling the witch hunt hysteria. His fascination with witchcraft was partly due to his personal experiences. In 1590, after a stormy voyage from Denmark, he believed witches had conjured storms to thwart his journey. This belief was solidified during the North Berwick witch trials, where several accused witches confessed, under severe torture, to raising storms against the king. James's obsession culminated in his book The Demonology, published in 1597. This treatise on witchcraft, necromancy, and the supernatural not only provided a theological justification for witch hunts but also detailed methods for identifying and prosecuting witches. His endorsement lent significant credibility to the persecution of witches and influenced witch hunts across Scotland and England. The social context was equally critical. The late 16th and early 17th centuries were times of political instability and economic hardship in Scotland. Famine, disease, and poverty were rampant, creating a fertile ground for fear and suspicion. People were looking for scapegoats to explain their suffering, and accusations of witchcraft provided a convenient outlet. Additionally, it's important to note the influence of continental Europe on Scottish witch hunts. Scotland was part of a broader European trend of witch persecution. The infamous Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, published in 1487 by Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, laid out a detailed guide for identifying, prosecuting, and executing witches. This book influenced witch hunts across Europe, including Scotland, and its impact can be seen in the legal and procedural aspects of the Scottish trials. Societal fears and superstitions. As we peel back the layers of history, we come face to face with the societal fears and superstitions that fueled the witch trials in Scotland. These irrational beliefs led to a frenzy of accusations and executions, creating a climate of fear and paranoia that gripped the nation. The fear of witchcraft was deeply rooted in the collective psyche of the time. Many believed that witches were in league with the devil, capable of casting curses, causing harm, and even manipulating the weather. These beliefs were often stoked by religious leaders who saw witchcraft as a direct threat to their authority and the social order. A key aspect of these fears was the belief in a maleficium, or harmful magic. Any unexplained misfortune, from failed crops to sudden illnesses, could be attributed to maleficium. This belief was compounded by the pervasive fear of the devil's influence, a theme heavily emphasized in sermons and religious teachings. In rural communities, where life was harsh and survival often depended on favorable weather and good health, the stakes were high. A bad harvest or an outbreak of disease could mean starvation or death. In such an environment, finding a scapegoat for misfortune became a way to exert some form of control over uncontrollable forces. Women, particularly those who were marginalized or lived on the fringes of society, often became easy targets. Religious leaders played a significant role in perpetuating these fears. The clergy, seen as moral and spiritual authorities, often preached about the dangers of witchcraft, linking it to the devil and eternal damnation. This preaching created a moral panic, where even the slightest suspicion could lead to accusations. The role of the witch prickers also highlights the extent of societal fear. Witch prickers were individuals who claimed to have the ability to identify witches by pricking their bodies with needles. If the accused did not bleed or feel pain, they were deemed to be witches. This practice, often motivated by financial gain, led to countless false accusations and executions. One such witch pricker was John Kincaid, whose services were in high demand during the height of the witch hunts. Kincaid traveled from town to town, conducting his grim work and profiting from the fear and paranoia that swept through communities. His methods were brutal and unscientific, yet they held considerable sway over local magistrates and the general populace. Another significant societal factor was the legal system itself. The Scottish courts operated under a legal framework that allowed for the use of torture to extract confessions. The Privy Council and local magistrates often sanctioned the use of brutal methods to force accused witches to confess to their alleged crimes. Once a confession was obtained, it was almost impossible for the accused to recant or receive a fair trial. The system was heavily weighted against the accused, perpetuating a cycle of fear and injustice. The economic motivation behind some witch hunts cannot be ignored. Local magistrates and officials often profited from the trials. The property of convicted witches was confiscated, providing financial incentives for prosecutions. Additionally, the costs of the trials, including the fees for witch prickers and the expenses of imprisonment, were often charged to the accused's family or community, creating a financial burden that fueled further accusations. Notable cases of Scottish witch trials. But it doesn't stop there. To shed light on the unjust trials and brutal punishments that were meted out to innocent individuals, we need to explore specific cases of Scottish witch trials. The stories of those who suffered during this dark period are a stark reminder of the injustices that can arise when fear and ignorance prevail. One of the most infamous cases was the North Berwick witch trials in 1590–91. This series of trials began when King James VI returned from Denmark and was caught in a severe storm. Believing the storm to be the result of witchcraft, he ordered an investigation. Agnes Sampson, a healer and midwife, was among those accused. Under torture, she confessed to summoning storms and communicating with the devil. Her trial was a spectacle, with her confession used to validate the witch hunt. She was eventually strangled and burned at the stake. Another notable case was the Great Scottish Witch Hunt of 1661–62, one of the largest witch hunts in Scotland's history. During this period, hundreds of people were accused of witchcraft across the country. The trials were characterized by intense paranoia and the use of brutal interrogation methods. Isabel Gowdie, from Aldern, is one of the most famous witches from this period. Her detailed confession included vivid descriptions of meetings with the devil, shape-shifting, and other supernatural activities. Historians believe her confessions were likely the result of coercion and torture. The case of Margaret Aitken, known as the Great Witch of Bulwery, is another tragic example. Arrested in 1597, Aitken confessed to witchcraft and, in an attempt to save her own life, agreed to identify other witches. She travelled around Scotland pointing out supposed witches, leading to numerous executions. Eventually, her credibility was questioned, and she was executed. Her case exemplifies how desperation and fear could lead to the perpetuation of witch hunts. One lesser-known but equally tragic case was that of Jonnet Wishart, accused in 1597. Her trial records provide a chilling account of the accusations and the process. Jonnet was accused of causing illness and death through witchcraft, based on testimonies from her neighbors. Despite her denials, she was found guilty and executed. Her case highlights the role of community suspicion and personal vendettas in the witch hunts. The trials in the town of Forres in 1662 provide another grim example. Janet McNichol and Isabel Gowdy were among those accused. Gowdy's confessions were incredibly detailed, describing how she and other witches transformed into animals and attended witches' sabbaths. Her vivid testimony, believed to be the result of severe torture, fueled the frenzy of accusations. The Forres trials led to numerous executions and are remembered as one of the most brutal episodes in Scottish witch hunting history. A particularly haunting case is that of Bessie Dunlop, who was tried in 1576. Bessie was known as a healer and a wise woman in her community. She claimed to receive her knowledge from a spirit named Thomas Reed, who had died at the Battle of Pinkie Cleugh. Despite her attempts to use her abilities for good, she was accused of witchcraft. Her trial records show how her supposed communication with spirits was interpreted as evidence of witchcraft. Bessie was convicted and executed, her case illustrating the fine line between accepted folk practices and condemned witchcraft. The case of Lilias Adey, from Torreburn, Fife, is particularly striking. In 1704, Lilias was accused of witchcraft and, under torture, confessed to being in league with the devil. Unlike many others, she died in prison before she could be executed. What makes her case unique is the fact that her body was buried in a tidal mudflat, covered with a large stone slab to prevent her spirit from rising and seeking revenge. Lilias Adey's grave is the only known witch's grave in Scotland, and it stands as a chilling testament to the fear and superstition that permeated society at the time. Moreover, the political context played a crucial role. The late 17th century was a time of political turbulence in Scotland, with conflicts such as the Wars of the Three Kingdoms and the Glorious Revolution creating a climate of uncertainty and fear. Political factions often used witchcraft accusations as a tool to discredit and eliminate their enemies. The witch hunts provided a convenient means to settle scores and consolidate power. A significant lesser-known fact is the role of children in the witch hunts. In several cases, children were used as witnesses or even accusers in witch trials. Their testimonies, often coerced or influenced by adults, were given considerable weight. The case of the Aldern trials in 1662 saw young children accusing adults of witchcraft, leading to numerous convictions and executions. The involvement of children highlights the pervasive fear and manipulation that characterized the witch hunts. The psychological and social impact. The psychological impact on those accused of witchcraft was profound. Many accused witches were subjected to sleep deprivation, physical torture, and psychological torment to extract confessions. The infamous witch's bridle, a metal device that prevented the accused from speaking, was used to silence and humiliate them. These methods not only led to false confessions but also caused immense suffering and trauma. One of the most feared methods of interrogation was swimming the witch. The accused were bound and thrown into water. If they floated, they were deemed guilty because water, the pure element, rejected them. If they sank, and often drowned, they were considered innocent. This barbaric practice highlights the irrational and cruel methods used to determine guilt. The witch hunts also had a devastating social impact. Families were torn apart, and communities were left in a state of perpetual fear and distrust. The social fabric of many towns and villages was irreparably damaged as neighbors turned against each other. The fear of being accused led to an atmosphere of paranoia, where any unusual behavior or misfortune could be interpreted as evidence of witchcraft. Women, in particular, were disproportionately targeted. Estimates suggest that around 80% of those accused were female. The stereotypical image of a witch as an old, poor, and solitary woman made women more vulnerable to accusations. This gender bias was rooted in contemporary beliefs about women's supposed moral and spiritual weakness, making them more susceptible to the devil's influence. The trials reinforced existing gender inequalities and subjected countless women to unimaginable suffering. The economic impact of the witch hunts was also significant. As mentioned earlier, the property of convicted witches was often confiscated, leading to financial gain for local authorities and officials. However, the cost of the trials themselves, including the expenses of imprisonment and execution, often fell on the community. This economic burden exacerbated existing social tensions and fueled further accusations, creating a vicious cycle of fear and persecution. The human cost and reflection. In conclusion, it's crucial to reflect on the human cost of the Scottish witch trials and the lessons we can glean from the mistakes of the past. The witch trials resulted in the execution of an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 people in Scotland, a staggering number considering the population of the time. These individuals, mostly women, were often the most vulnerable members of society: widows, healers, midwives, and those who simply did not conform to societal norms. The trials serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria, scapegoating, and the abuse of power. The fear and ignorance that fueled the witch hunts led to countless injustices and untold suffering. Innocent people were tortured, executed, and had their lives and reputations destroyed based on little more than superstition and suspicion. By understanding and acknowledging these dark moments in history, we can strive to create a more just and compassionate society today. We must remain vigilant against the forces of ignorance and fear that can lead to such tragic outcomes. Education and critical thinking are essential tools in combating the kind of mass hysteria that led to the witch trials. It's our responsibility to ensure that such injustices are never repeated. The Scottish witch trials also highlight the importance of legal protections and the need for due process. The lack of fair trials and the use of torture to extract confessions were significant factors in the wrongful convictions and executions. Modern legal systems must uphold the principles of justice and human rights to prevent similar injustices. Furthermore, the witch trials remind us of the dangers of othering and scapegoating marginalized groups. Throughout history, societies have often targeted those who are different or do not conform to the norm, whether due to their gender, race, religion, or social status. The witch hunts are a stark example of how fear and prejudice can lead to the persecution of the innocent. In reflecting on this dark chapter, it's also important to honor the memory of the victims. In recent years, there have been efforts in Scotland to acknowledge the injustices of the past. Memorials and historical markers have been erected to commemorate those who were accused and executed for witchcraft. These efforts serve as a reminder of the importance of historical memory and the need to confront and learn from our past. As we conclude our exploration of the Scottish witch trials, let us remember the human cost and strive to build a society where justice, compassion, and understanding prevail. By learning from history, we can work towards a future where fear and ignorance no longer lead to such tragic outcomes. Before we wrap up, I want to encourage you to engage with this topic further. If you found this information intriguing, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more captivating historical content, and don't forget to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Your voice matters, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the shocking truth behind the Scottish witch trials. Until next time, this is Medieval Chronicles 1066, signing off.